All right, so we are entering the eclipse season, Monifa, and there's a lot of energy coming up. And when it comes to the theme of letting go, letting go, letting go, right? But letting go of what? So I think today we are going to talk about something very interesting, which is, are we supposed to let go of our ego?
Oh, yeah. Well, depends how you think about it. You know
Yeah,
my answers. Yeah.
because
I
honestly speaking, because we just talked earlier, when we first created this authenticity project together, like, why do we care? Why do we even care? Was it our ego caring so much about we need to be authentic, or we truly mean it? Like, we really want to get to the truth of what authenticity means to you, to me, to people, around us. So let's talk about this. I think, well, I don't know how it's going to flow, but I'm going to invite you, your beautiful insight and wisdom, to talk about, like, yeah, when was when was the last time, I just say, when was the last time you were able to kind of like catch yourself, say, I'm heading toward the ego way. That's a little bit distorted. Let me just come back to what feels more true to me, which is, the more authentic self is speaking to you. Let's talk about this.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, crazily enough, I what immediately came to mind is that we are working on the book Loving What Is by Byron Katie. Uh, and it's exactly that. It's like, when's the last time? Well, I'm actually actively doing it because I'm going to do a podcast about the book and like tomorrow. So it is this kind of conversation where you're literally questioning or investigating yourself
Mm.
on what is behind your thoughts and what you are idealizing or wanting, right? and and it's so much of that examination, like turning back and saying what triggers that idea of wanting to be authentic. To me, that's the idea, is that you have
Yeah.
to ask yourself these questions if you have any chance of being authentic. Why I think it's important is because I think knowing yourself is important. And if you know yourself, you want to be true to yourself. I believe being true to yourself is important, right?
Mm.
Because if you're not true to yourself, the body will rebel, like in illness, or your mind will rebel in psychosis, or your spirit rebels, and not letting you do anything in the physical world. Like it comes back to you in so many ways. But I think our egos, like, so maybe our shadow ego. So this is kind of the point of bringing this all up, right? Is that the shadow ego often is like masquerading its agenda as, um, as like, best intentions.
That's true.
That,
That's true.
so it's so interesting because I feel like this is why the spiritual ego thing came up, because often we have aggrandized our best intentions into the truth of for everyone.
Mm.
uh, and so I think it's important that we are in examination of these things regularly. I don't think it's ever good to just say, oh yes, I've already done that work and now I'm free from all things shadow related personality wise. um, and I think it's cute. I think that's derogatory, but like, I think it's something that we, part of the human path that all of us feel like we've transcended and then realize we haven't. It's a thing. And at the same time, I'm very much somebody who likes to stay grounded. I like to stay grounded in the logical things that will help us on this now path and what we're creating in this world now.
Oh,
So I think to me, I need that physicality of personality, need spirit. I need that ego to be somehow seated, you know?
I love what you just talked about so much is that, how when we are so attached to the egotistic part of ourselves, I mean, unconsciously, and we talk about it. All of us, we all have narcissistic traits. I mean, we're not going too deep to the diagnostic of how serious that is a disorder, but I'm saying in general, we all have that narcissistic traits. We care about what we care about, right? And then so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So a lot of times we'll feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not measuring up to what I am envisioning who I'm here to be, or comparing to other people, right? And so our ego gets really unsafe, activated, or when we are having that part of us is not healed, it's wounded, right? It's like, oh my god, I need to do something manipulative. Of course, it's not, but yeah, let me just maneuver my way to I get to my agenda, the outcome that I want, right? So I can be seen. I can be seen. I can be seen in a way that's being cared and loved by others, right? And it's really
Mm,
subtle sometimes. I'm sharing about this is
really
because
super
that has been
subtle.
my path. That has been my path when I was playing
Well,
an authentic vibe or way, which I wasn't very aware of it. I could see now going back, like, oh my gosh, I was maneuver my way through life in order to obtain love and attention from other people without allowing myself to go within and say, you are safe right now. Like you just pointed out so good, right now. But we're so
yeah.
like programmed to look outside, go to the future, go to the past, right?
Absolutely. Well, not just program, like literally operational.
Yeah,
Our
exactly.
our operating system is built to, and yeah. So that is part of it. Is that we get to be narcissistic. Like that's the whole point, kind of being human, especially at this time in this day and age.
The liberation.
It's a little bit the point. Like we're here to figure out who we are, to be unique, and to support ourselves in the unique things that we need to be fully supported. And that is the name of the game. And so it becomes something where if you're like that's why I feel like it can be this weird conversation with authenticity, because we treat authenticity like we treat like we used to treat ego, which is that it's just like if you're not authentic, then you're bad,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my gosh.
And
Yes.
it's like, and that's how we started, which is how it was somewhat egotistical, because it was very much that was the truth for us at that point. And then we're kind of skewed away from, we're like, well, yeah, we're still calling it what we call it, but we're not. It is a bigger conversation. We know that. And now we're like back to this point where it's like, okay, yeah, authenticity is important, but just because you're not yet authentic doesn't mean that you're not authentically trying to
Oh
be
my god,
you.
that's so
You
good.
know,
Yeah.
so I think we have we just we define things, we set parameters, we create structures so that we can learn the things that are built on top of it. But really, a lot of times when we hold these concepts of truth, which is what we were talking about before, they're really just scaffolding for now so that you can continue the growth, you know. Uh, but it's not always for always. It's, it's not always forever to be the only truth.
Yes.
And that's what's the beauty part of like just gaining in wisdom and growing and learning and growing some more. This is a fun game we chose. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for just mentioning that, because I used to have guilt around, oh my God, if I'm not sticking with my truth, then that means I'm not authentic, right? But like you said, what if the truth that you're honoring is in this moment only, and you have the freedom and the room to explore what's more about, what doesn't vibe with you in the next moment? You might actually go against the current truth that you just spoke about, even. And
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of guilt around it. Like, ugh, did I just say something that's I'm okay, I'm already against what I just said? That is so not authentic. I used to judge myself for that. But
Mm.
what you brought up, it brought a lot of eliminate, thanks to the eclipse, right? Eliminate the shadows of how harsh we can judge ourselves through even spiritual ego, like we just talked about. The spiritual ego,
Mhm.
we need to be perfect the way we preach, or to, we practice what we preach. We are perfect the way we are, all that stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's really,
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
really tricky.
it wants to become the real reason why, because you can't be called selfish. I feel like this is just kind of what's the pervading thing that we are transcending right now, is this kind of feminine tied to servant, tied to service for everybody who needs it.
Hmm.
Like that we're going to fix every problem that ever existed, essentially, solely by being loving, kind, and nurturing, right? This kind of old concept of feminine, I feel like that's being kind of trapped. Like it's no, well, it's done. It's just done, and that spirituality, to me, that's the spiritual ego that came up when we're talking about, is a little narcissistic to say that like the soul way of being in full service,
Mm.
and and kind of all of these things. This is why I feel like we have to have these conversations with ourselves as well. Like, what is important about this? Because if it's like just Captain Save the World, then we are being a little totalitarianistic. I don't know. We
Yeah.
are being a little grandiose, and while that is part of the ego dynamic, if we're in conscious awareness with ourselves, know that we are also divine. So there is a point in which, like, if we are in touch fully with ourselves, that we're going to have that sense of impacting the world. We
Mm.
just have, we just, we, I think when somebody says to be humble, they want you to recognize all the things that are connected to you making that impact. And it's usually other people, and they're other divine beings. It's not just you out there making everything happen. It's the ripple effect, it's the domino effect, it's the ripples of energy that you cause when you show up and speak a thing, and then the next person receives it in the way that they do, and then go forward from themselves, right?
Something that came up right now while you're talking. I'm just like, wow, I see this. How in the spiritual sense, or in any spiritual community, we talk about we are all one, we're light and love, and I mean, yes, we are all light and love, right? Initially speaking, but at the same time, it's like if we do not honor that part of ourselves that feels uh, yeah, more self-centered, narcissistic part of ourselves, if we do not know about ourselves on an individual level, right? The individuality, the unity, the grand sense of unity would become very unstable anyway, because each individual are not connected to who they are. Then the one was still feeling really lopsided. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, that is my theory. My theory is that the earth suffers when we are not, when we are not one. And what to be one, we have to be an acknowledgement of our dynamic. Our dynamic is change, is movement. And so in order for us to be fully in a place where we can be fully ourselves, so that we can be fully in the energy that was determined, so that we could be this balanced evolution, right? All of that takes that self-awareness to say, okay, well, I know that I am one with the whole, but in the energy playing out within me is this.
Mm.
And then I choose to be in alignment with it by doing these things.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it becomes a practice, because it's something that is literally set up. We are set up to set ourselves off course. So, why would you do that? Well, because you're always, I forget what the quote is, but there's this guy always says that essentially that like 90% of the time an airplane is in course correction,
Mm.
right? They know their destination and they know where they are and they know in what relationship they are going, but they can never be like straight on in that line because of air patterns and because of cloud disruption and because of, all densities and humidity. All these things are playing a role, and so they're constantly course correcting. So you're never directly on path, is kind of supposed to be a metaphor. You're never directly on path. It's always about returning to self. It's not ever going to be like I'm whole in one. Otherwise, it just transcend and you'll be done. It's nothing.
What you're here for. Yeah.
Like you won't like people are like, but people always, we all have our moments, right? But when we were just like so self-righteous and we're just like, we need to do this thing that is the truth of all people. Oh, and then it just reminds me of my husband because he has these moments where he's like, I am God. And he's just like, he's just so clear on it. And I'm just like, you're still here. So there must be something wrong with you. I'm just such a realist in that way. You must be working on something because you're still here.
As long as you're breathing, you are here to learn, right?
Like,
Oh
yeah,
my,
we're here to human. We're here to human.
yeah,
It looks messy sometimes.
it has been, at least that's my personal experience, that's always been sort of chaos has to be involved in a way in order to kind of like see the next level of what feels true to me, right?
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because you just talked about something very important, which is like, okay, when we're unraveling that spiritual ego, and then there's that 90% of our journey is course correcting, right? But when we're so much attached to our certain identity, a role that we assign to ourselves, say, okay, I am this teacher or this teacher hat or whatever hat that we're wearing, I'm a good mother, right? Then we have a lot of expectation that we assign to ourselves, not to say how other people will assign to us, because we assigned it so hard on ourselves already. We invite other people to assign their expectation to us as well, right? And then so
Yeah, of course. They're like, well, I'm working so hard. You should notice.
yes, exactly. The expectation from the outer world and our inner world, it's like, just smashing you or spanking you almost, right? To the point like, okay, I don't know who I am anymore because I feel lost because of the role I play in particular in this dynamic, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, the word, of course, vulnerability. It's like, yeah, being overly used, being overly, talked about probably these days ever since Brene Brown is, talking about that a lot.
Yeah.
But allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, it is a journey to authenticity. I really feel, because that's how we allow ourselves to feel safe, to share that insecurity, right? But at the same time, of course, we all have to journey with, oh my gosh, I have that vulnerability hang over after I share this. And
Yeah.
that's when the ego will also come in to say, see, I told you, you shouldn't even do that.
Why did you try that?
Right. So it's like that 90% of course correcting is very interesting because your ego gonna participate, and then our higher self will participate as well. So it's like a tangle, right? Dancing.
Yeah, well, it's essentially turning our judgment. And this is so interesting to me because I feel like that's how we started, is that you were talking about the lunar eclipse, or you were, um and then you were talking about, is ego, like, is it, what do we need, or is, what are we letting go of to be authentic, or that something along those lines.
Right.
uh, with this lunar eclipse, it was a letting go of judgment. So if you're looking at Gene Keys,
Yes.
by Gene Keys
Mm,
archetypes, so Gene Keys archetype, the shadow is judgment, and the gift is integrity. So what are we letting go of to be in integrity? And what is the difference is essentially that the shadow in judgment, we are attaching to the idea and proof of the idea out of fear that if we're not right, we are not safe or we are not needed or valued or whatever our highest
mm,
desire is.
mm,
And so, if we're doing that out of the fear of having that be true, then you are in that wrong relationship. And integrity is essentially when you are holding a standard out of love for the highest possibility of experience or joy or whatever for the whole, or for at least for those in the room. So, um, and so that is a big difference. And I feel like this is the problem, not necessarily with having the hat of mom and having the hat of business owner,
mm,
or having the hat of spouse, or whatever these hats are. Um, is usually, but are we defining the hat out of fear of not being seen, or of not being heard, of not being valued, of not being seen as but how we want to be seen, loving, kind,
mm, mm.
generous, all of these kind of things. So are we somehow attaching to ideas of mother, ideas of wife, and then assigning ourselves to these things that were never said, but we assumed.
Mm.
And out of fear, we decided that it must be true. And this is, again, this is why it's so fun, because this is exactly what I've been examining with the book Loving What Is that it makes you ask the questions that really say, yeah, it's nice that you had this belief to feel safe with for a while, but let's just be real, right? Like, this is all you. This is all, perceived and conceived and received by you, right? And yeah, it's a real come to spirit moment.
It's just mind-boggling sometimes, like when we're so much trapped in the to-dos, every day taking care of this, taking care of that. It's so hard to be in the now moment. This is where, what you have just talked about. It's like we are here, and then when we're here, you are only with yourself, and there's no hat. Let's just say, yeah, your own hat right here, right? You and your own
Mhm.
hat. What speak to you that feels peace? I'm using the word peace because it feels like there's a point of ease, that you don't have to be righteous, you don't have to be arguing or convincing other people to do, or to show up in a certain way, because you surrender to peace. Right? And only the now
Yeah.
moment has the magic of connecting to that point. It's not in the future, it's not in the past of, we're chewing on the past and wondering if peace is, I used to be so peaceful over there. you know
It's always nice to say, for the past, oh, that was so lovely. And then you were complaining the whole time. But but yeah, I think that is the truth, is that you really you can't be in right relationship without being in a clear now.
Yeah.
And what it takes to be in a clear now, this is something that I've been working on for a
Hey,
while. I have like a whole slide for this, and it takes like a half an hour to explain.
okay, can you shorten it, condense it, and share with
I'll, I will I will try. Let's see.
yeah,
But
okay.
the reason why I keep talking about time space is because it's now how I conceive of the possibility of transcendence within a moment,
Mm,
which is, there's time. And the only reason why we can perceive transcendence is if we are in relationship to this now moment, which tends to be the 3D for us humans.
mm,
And so, we time space is what largest definition of that. And so where you are and when you are, and that relationship includes the other energies because time and space is also determined by who is also in the room, so to speak. And the only possibility of transcendence occurs in the energy. So, how are we reading the energy and how are we allowing it to move and change us
Mm.
is where we become the co creator of our experience, right? And so we can transcend in that point of choice, is which a lot of people call it in different systems. That call it is like a point of choice where you get to interact with the now moment in a way that will spiral you to a transcendent experience of your gift, of your city, of your ultimate possibility for everybody in that space. That's what I'm looking for, is for that everybody. Um, when we are in our spiritual selves, that's our highest desire, is for everybody to have a better experience, including ourselves and of ourselves, which is kind of the authority of sovereignty, which I think is necessary. Like, let me ask you a question. What do you think is that difference between like the idea of a sovereignty? Is this like, is sovereignty a spiritual narcissism?
Oh my
I
God.
don't know. I mean, I have a whole podcast named it, so like no shade given, right? If anybody's
Let me look
missing
it up on
that.
the dictionary. Sovereignty, so well, I can
Oh, that's
share,
true. We should
right?
define
And
it.
I share my point of view or
Yeah.
experience is that without even knowing the word sovereignty, it doesn't mean that you are not in sovereignty. But
Right.
of course, it will require us to kind of be able to say what doesn't feel right to me. Can I honor my intuitive guidance right now? So whatever that's outside of us that seems ideal or we are aspiring towards, I mean, all those images that came to us, yes, we can honor them, but at the same time, if we are not grounded enough to say, here is where I am now, and I honor where I am now fully, even if I'm going through chaos, I'm going through just crazy, muddy messes. If I am able to say, I still love you, I still love you, no matter how disastrous or how intense you're feeling, girl, I still love you. And then be able to say, okay, all things outside of me, I'm willing to I'm willing to just say pause, and it's safe for me to go within and give myself that sense of comfort. You're safe no matter how you're experiencing the waves right now. And then make a choice from that place. It feels sovereign to me. I don't know if it makes
Yeah.
sense to you, but yeah,
Yeah.
it all starts from S, right? And S,
Mm.
self.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think of it that way. As like being an authority of your of what is ideal or set apart or sacred to you. I think that for me, that's what that means. And I think the difference again is just the love. The only difference really is love. Like the only difference between sovereignty and narcissism is out of love, I'm being fully myself. I'm fully accepting of myself. So you can now experience love within your space, right?
Beautiful, beautiful. Because
Yeah.
also narcissistic tendencies and say more self-loving tendencies, the gap is also I'm choosing fear. I'm gonna let fear dominate me right now, right? And the other one is like you said, I'm gonna surrender to love. Even it's hard, but I'm gonna choose this part of me that feels hard, but it's the highway, a higher way of experience.
Yeah.
And here, it's easier. I'm tempted to do it, but can I say no to it? Can I say no to this? And it takes bravery too, because it challenges our human nature. Human nature.
Yeah. I mean, well, and training, right?
And
I
train.
think a lot of us are well trained to make other people comfortable and to to soothe over don't exacerbate,
Mm.
don't agitate other people, right? I know there's like a lot of my inauthenticity when I was younger was because I didn't want to upset anybody or I didn't want them to feel awkward because I know how hard it was to feel awkward. And I was like, no, you shouldn't feel awkward. I feel awkward enough for both of us. Um,
Yeah.
so it was a lot of that kind of conflating other people's emotions for my own and then acting for them first out of some
Mm,
kind of
mm,
need to be accepted,
mm,
right? To be
mm,
accepted and loved because, I was a good person. I didn't want it to be seen as a good person. I was one of my biggest attachments to like the label of Christianity as well. Like it took me a long time to admit that I was choosing beliefs that maybe not all Christians held. And what the hardest part of that was my attachment to like the safety and it wasn't just in my head as part of the safety of being African American is to be Christian because now you're a good African American and then you get to be slot into there almost automatically if you're giving enough perception of that, right? And so it was a little bit of a tug of fear of safety, right, for me, not just with people in general, but also with my family, because now I'm no longer considered mainstream to my family because of
mm,
the beliefs I hold.
mm,
And so now I don't really have that kind of safety or cushion either. So it becomes like, talking about vulnerability, right? In order for me to be truly authentic to what I perceive as the real me,
mm.
I have had to become more vulnerable. It was a choice I had to make.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you you really speak to my heart right now because yes, even though the ethnic background is different, but the experience is very much relatable. Yeah, for me, it's more of my father and my mother. Their essential, I would say, their value systems all about giving means kindness, taking means you're bad, right? So I have
Yeah.
that heavily affected in my psyche. So whenever I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to receive this. No, no, let me just give you more. Right. So easier to give you more. It's easier for me to just give. Right. But when it comes to receive, it's like, it's foreign. Right. We are very affected in a way, not just, the upbringing, but also, yeah, religious background and all the things that's affecting the way we are and how we operate in the world. And so coming back, I think it's good for us to kind of wrap around. It's like in order for us to feel more authentic, right? We need to be in the now because if we are tuned out to the now, then we don't know which battle to fight. Is it outside or inside? You don't know which battle to pick. And then you're going to be so sandwiched by both battles. Both of them are illusional too, anyway. Okay, so would love to invite you to just point us back to what would be a good way to collaborate with our ego without, distorting it. So we become more sovereign, like you just mentioned, we become more sovereign and more natural. I think natural is the word I'm looking for. Natural, the naturalness. Because a lot of times
Mm,
we reject the nature in ourselves, the nature in ourselves, the volcano part of ourselves, the splashing, the crazy
yeah.
thunderstorms we're afraid of, the parts in our.
Yeah, this reminds me of what you were talking about before as far as like being aligned to your element, right? This to me is why it is important to kind of know your dynamics of change. What is really coming to forefront for me is that I've been reading a book on the I Ching,
Mm,
and that that it is the study of change, and how there is that necessity to really to examine both sides of a thing, and it's always in the duality. It's never in this kind of, oh yes, you can like hang out in the gray space and call it home. It's always this kind of juxtaposition of energy and then the ultimate play out. And naturalness to me, like in order for you to feel natural for yourself, uh, first and then others, um, is that you will be attuned or aligned or in rhythm
Mm,
of that element. There's certain ways that we shift and change in our emotions and in our actions. And if we are not honoring the ways in which we shift and change, then it looks unnatural. It looks like it's either you're trying too hard or you're not doing enough. Like it's
yeah.
gonna always kind of, I mean, that perception is always available for the externals, but like for yourself, even, you're going to feel like you're either rushing to catch up
Mm,
or you're going to feel like you're behind.
mm, mhm. Yep.
You know, that's why it's important about being synchronized and being in rhythm with yourself and resonant to yourself.
So, I mean, wrapping things up with you here is that what I hear from you also earlier when you mentioned about the 90% of the course direct, right? Course correct,
Mm.
then kind of allowing your own rhythm with the navigation system inside of you. I mean, in order to continue to course correct, we need to trust the now, right? Not trust what we're going to get in the outcome in the future or based on the past outcome. But here, like, okay, we're navigating foreign terrain here, but then we know we're going to be heading somewhere that feels more just more true to ourselves.
Yeah, and it's always a surprise. Like this is where we get our spiritual terms from, in my opinion. Like the spiritual feeling experiences, I think, is kind of how people talk about them,
Mm.
like spiritual, like wonder,
Yeah.
uh, surprise,
Yes.
um, fascination,
Mm.
or admiration, right? Like there's different kind of, you just kind of, if you get into that beingness of those things, you're going to touch upon spirit at some level, right? And and so yeah, I think it's those, having that access to those experiences that keeps us in that possibility of the transcendence, because the reality is that there is, you know, we're always like you said, that we're always course correcting. It will we will never kind of, at least for my people, I think I have to maybe qualify this, but at least for my people, will never feel fully comfortable. We definitely desire a sense of controlled, almost a static control. Like I'm in control now, like I'm controlling everything now. And they want that feeling, but that's not available. That's not part of this experience. Um, and so we are always going to be in that little bit of discomfort. So what we really need to do is like just like be in our connectedness and just trust
Trust. Trust.
in that, in the drift, but the because the higher self sees all of that in play, and you just have to be willing to like coast while they're taking care of all the things you can't see, right? And then when it happens, you're like both surprised and not surprised all at the same time. You knew they were taking care of it, but you just didn't know it was going to show up like that type of feeling. And I think that's really where we get to be in true freshness of our true authenticity as well, because who we are is also evolving in any given moment if we're allowing for it. And so we get to surprise ourselves with our own beauty, our own wisdom, our own um availability for the other, or the largeness of our heart. Like it gets to surprise us and you're like, whoa, I didn't, you know, I know I was doing all that work, but I didn't expect that to happen, you know. And I think that's what we love as coaches too, Jen. I think we really love seeing that aha and just having them glimpse like just how awesome they really are, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would love to say I invite everyone here when you're listening, watching this episode, to invite your childlike innocence to come to play more. Because without that, we get too stiff into controlling everything. And that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. So, like what Monifa just said is so beautifully, is that when we are, what is the only job we are here to do, if we really have to assign a job to ourselves, is taking care of the now, taking care of how you feel, taking care of what you're thinking right now, taking care of how your body is connecting with you. And the rest is not your business. The
So
unfolding,
true.
unfolding is not our business.
So true. It
Yeah.
really isn't.
All right. Thank you so much, Monifa. Always
Thank you,
love
Jen.
your beautiful insight and wisdom. So everyone, hope you enjoy this video, and then share with us how you deal with your egotistical patterns, and never feel bad about feeling a little bit narcissistic. We can turn it into a healthy way. Yes.
Yeah, through awareness.
Bye, guys.